The Declaration. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime was silent. 3,000 representatives from 200 different species sat in their floating chairs, watching the central platform. The light was dim and blue, the way the conclave always kept it during important moments. High Arbiter stood at the center. His body was made of living crystal, and light moved through him like water through glass. He was old, older than most civilizations in the room. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species discover fire and then discover how to burn worlds. Today, he would speak words that would echo through history. "The Conclave recognizes this session," said. His voice was like wind through hollow stones. "We gather to address the matter of species 7742, known in their own tongue as humanity." Somewhere in the hall, a commander smiled. His scales were dark red, and his teeth were sharp. His name was, and he had led the fleet that burned Earth 50 years ago. He remembered the blue planet turning orange and black. He remembered the screams on the radio before they went silent. 50 cycles have passed since the Purification War, continued. 50 cycles since the Empire exercised military action against the human and all colonial settlements. In this time, no human signal has been detected. No human ship has been seen. No human survivor has been found. The hall remained quiet. Some species felt sadness. Humans had been young and strange, but they had shown promise. Others felt nothing at all. Species came and went. The galaxy was very old. "The Science Council has completed its final survey," said. A hologram appeared above him, showing a burned and broken planet, Earth. The oceans were gone, turned to steam and then to nothing. The continents were black scars. No life signs detected. Atmospheric composition indicates complete ecological collapse. The planet is dead. Leaned forward in his seat. This was the moment he had waited for. "The colony worlds show similar readings," said. More holograms appeared. Mars, Europa, Titan, colony, station, all dark, all silent, all dead. Every human settlement has been surveyed. Every location shows the same result. Paused. The crystal of his body pulsed with soft light. "Therefore, by the authority granted to this body, the Galactic Conclave officially declares humanity extinct." The words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Some representatives bowed their heads. The section erupted in quiet celebration, their forked tongues tasting the air with satisfaction. In the back of the hall, hidden in the shadows of the observation gallery, an old woman watched. Her name was. 50 years ago, she had been the human ambassador to the Conclave. She had begged for help when they attacked. She had screamed for justice when the bombs fell. No one had listened. Now she was supposed to be dead like all the others, but was very much alive, and she was not alone. She touched a small device hidden in her sleeve. A single pulse of light traveled from her fingertip, through the device, across space, and into the darkness of the Sol system. It was a simple message, only 3 words. "They believe it." Stood to address the conclave. His voice was deep and proud. "The Empire accepts this declaration with honor. Humanity was a threat to galactic peace. They were violent. They were unpredictable. They spread too fast and asked too many questions. We did what was necessary." "They were children," someone called out. It was a small being with soft fur and large eyes. Her species had traded with humans. They had liked them. They were barely spacefaring for 200 years. "Children with nuclear weapons," replied. "Children who had already fought 3 wars among themselves before they left their own system. We saved the galaxy from a future cancer. History will thank us." Raised a crystalline hand. "This is not a trial. The Purification War was sanctioned by the conclave majority. We are not here to debate its morality. We are here to close the record." The representative lowered her eyes. There was nothing more to say. Somewhere in the void between stars, a ship drifted in complete darkness. It was called the Defiance, and it was supposed to be destroyed. Its captain, a man named, sat in his command chair and watched a screen showing the conclave broadcast. "They really think we're gone," his first officer said. Her name was, and her voice was filled with cold anger. "Good," said, "let them think it." The Defiance was not alone. Hidden in the asteroid belt of a dead system, 47 other ships waited in silence. They had waited for 50 years. They could wait a little longer. Back on Nexus Prime was finishing his speech. "Let the record show that on this day, species 7742 was declared extinct. Their planets will be monitored for recovery. If any survivors are found, they will be granted refugee status under conclave protection." "There are no survivors," said. "I made sure of it." But was wrong. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in tunnels that went down 40 kilometers, 800 million humans lived and worked. They had been there for 50 years. Their grandparents had dug these tunnels in secret while the politicians talked about peace. Their parents had watched the sky burn on screens and then had turned those screens off forever. This generation had never seen the sun. They had never felt rain on their faces. They only knew the hum of machines and the glow of artificial light. But they knew something else too. They knew what they had done. They knew that the galaxy had watched and done nothing. And they knew that one day they would rise. In Bunker 7, beneath what had once been called Korea, Director stood before a wall of screens. She was 60 years old, born in the darkness, raised for this purpose. Her hair was gray and her eyes were sharp. "Signal received from Ambassador," her aide said. "The conclave has made the declaration." Nodded slowly. She had expected this. They all had. "And our response? The Council of Bunkers is voting now." Turned to look at a massive door behind her. It was made of steel 3 meters thick. Behind it lay something the galaxy could not imagine, something humanity had spent 50 years building. Her communication device buzzed. She looked at the message. It was from the Council, signed by all 12 bunker directors. The message was short. "Begin Phoenix Protocol." Allowed herself a small smile. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had carried a heavy weight for a very long time and was finally ready to set it down. "Send the word to all bunkers," she said. "Wake the fleet. Begin surface restoration. Contact our people in the outer colonies." She paused and looked at the screens showing the conclave, showing's proud face, showing declaring humanity dead and gone. "Let them have their celebration," said. "It will make our return all the—" In the cold space above Earth, hidden among the debris of the old orbital stations, a satellite that had been sleeping for 50 years opened its electronic eye. It looked at the stars. It looked at the galaxy that had forgotten humanity. Then it began to transmit. The signal was too weak for anyone to notice. It was just a whisper in the void, a tiny pulse of energy that meant nothing to the great powers of the galaxy. But it carried a message, repeated over and over in every human language. "We are still here, we remember, and we are coming." The survivors. 50 years earlier, the sky had turned to fire. Director was 10 years old when the bombs fell. She did not remember much about that day. Her mother had grabbed her hand and pulled her through crowds of screaming people. There were sirens everywhere. The ground shook. The air smelled like burning metal. Then they went underground, and the world above them died. Now walked through Bunker 7, the place that had been her home for 5 decades. The tunnels stretched for hundreds of kilometers, carved into the ancient rock beneath the Korean peninsula. Lights lined the ceiling, soft and warm, imitating sunlight that no one here had ever truly seen. People filled the corridors, workers heading to the factories, children running to school, farmers tending the underground fields where vegetables grew under artificial light. Life had continued. Life always continued. Doctor met her at the entrance to the science wing. He was 73 years old, one of the few who remembered the surface. His eyes carried a sadness that never fully went away. "The Council's order has been received," said. "Phoenix Protocol is active." Nodded. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life. "Show me." They walked together through security checkpoints, each one heavier than the last. Guards saluted as they passed. Everyone knew what today meant. The whispers had been spreading for hours. After 50 years of waiting, the time had finally come. The final door opened and stepped into the launch control center. Hundreds of technicians sat at screens, monitoring systems that had been sleeping for decades. In the center of the room, a massive hologram showed Earth and the space around it. But this was not the dead Earth the Conclave had seen. This was the real Earth. "Surface restoration began 3 hours ago," said. "Bunkers 1 through 12 have opened their agricultural domes. Oxygen levels are stabilizing. The terraforming engines are running at full power." Stared at the hologram. Green patches were appearing on the continents, spreading like healing wounds. The oceans, hidden underground in vast reservoirs, were being pumped back to the surface. Lakes were forming. Rivers were starting to flow. "How long until the planet is visible from orbit?" 6 months for basic recovery, 2 years for full restoration. Paused. "But that is not what you want to see." He touched a control and the hologram expanded, showing the solar system. Red dots appeared everywhere. In the asteroid belt, hidden behind Jupiter's moons, scattered through the belt, hundreds of red dots. "The Phoenix Fleet," said. 327 capital ships, 10,000 fighters, 50 years of work hidden in hollowed-out asteroids and abandoned stations. Felt her heart beating faster. She had seen the numbers before, but seeing them like this, all lit up and ready, was different. And the weapons. Far beyond anything the galaxy has seen. While they were celebrating our death, we were learning. We studied every piece of technology we could capture. We improved it. We created new things they cannot imagine. Lieutenant entered the room and saluted. She was 25 years old, born underground, trained for war since she could walk. Her eyes were steady and cold. She had never seen in person, but she had studied them her whole life. She knew how they fought. She knew how they died. "Surface teams are reporting success," said. "First wave of personnel has reached open air. Radiation levels are within acceptable limits." Felt something strange, an emotion she could not name. "They're outside right now." "Yes, Director, they're looking at the sky." The sky, a concept new only from old photographs and her mother's stories. Blue during the day, black with stars at night, clouds that moved without any machine pushing them, rain that fell without any pump lifting it. "I want to see," she said quietly. And exchanged looks but said nothing. They followed through more tunnels, up long elevators, through doors that had been sealed for 50 years. The air changed. It became fresh in a way had never experienced. Then she stepped outside. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and pink and purple, colors so bright they hurt her eyes. Wind touched her face, real wind, not the recycled air of the bunkers. She heard birds singing, actual birds, released from the preservation vaults years ago to begin repopulating the surface. Fell to her knees. Tears rolled down her face. Around her, hundreds of others were doing the same thing. People who had never seen the sky, crying and laughing and holding each other. Some touched the grass, unable to believe it was real. Some just stood there, staring upward, trying to fit this infinite space into minds that had only known tunnels. "They tried to take this from us," whispered. "They burned it, they destroyed it, and we brought it back." Stood beside her, watching the sunset with an expression that was hard to read. "What happens now, Director?" Wiped her eyes and stood up. The sadness was leaving her, replaced by something stronger, determination, purpose. "Now we remind the galaxy that humanity is not so easy to kill." In the Launch Control Center, technicians worked through the night. Ship captains across the solar system received their orders. Engines that had been cold for decades began to warm up. Weapons systems ran final checks. Soldiers put on armor they had never worn into real battle. Captain stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching his crew prepare. His first officer brought him a data tablet. "All ships report ready," she said. "The fleet can move within 48 hours. And the first target? Colony, they use it as a mining outpost. They keep human slaves there." His jaw tightened. During the war, when ships were fleeing Earth, some had been captured instead of destroyed. They had kept the survivors as workers, believing no one would ever come for them. "Those people have been waiting 50 years, said. "Let's not make them wait any longer." Back on the surface, returned to the bunker. There was work to do, messages to send, plans to finalize, but she carried something new inside her now. The sky, the sunset, the feeling of wind on her face. She passed a school where children were being taught the history of Earth. They learned about the old nations, the old wars, the old mistakes. They learned about the attack and the decision to hide. They learned about the Phoenix Protocol. A young boy raised his hand. "Teacher, will we really go back to space?" The teacher, an old man who had been born before the bombs, smiled gently. "Yes, soon." "Will there be more war?" The teacher's smile faded. "Perhaps, but this time we will not be caught unprepared. This time we are ready." Walked on. She reached her office and sat down at her desk. A photograph hung on the wall. It showed a city before the bombing. Seoul, towers of glass and steel reaching toward a blue sky. She had never seen it herself, but her mother had described it many times. Someday, she thought, we will rebuild it, better than before. Her communication device activated. A face appeared on the screen. "Admiral, commander of the Phoenix Fleet." "Director," he said, "the fleet is assembled. We await your order." Looked at the photograph one last time. Then she looked at and spoke the words that would change everything. "The order is given. Rise, Phoenix. Let humanity return to the stars." Across the solar system, engines ignited. Ships emerged from their hiding places. The darkness of space filled with light as the Phoenix fleet moved together for the first time. In the conclave halls, no one noticed. In the Empire, no one knew. The galaxy continued to believe that humanity was dead and gone. But that belief was about to shatter into a million pieces. First contact again. The mining colony of 442B was a place of suffering. Red dust covered everything. The air was thin and bitter. 3 suns hung in the sky, casting strange shadows across the landscape. Guards patrolled the mine entrances, their weapons ready, their eyes bored. This was an easy assignment. The workers were weak. The work was profitable. Nothing ever happened here. Deep underground, a man named swung his pickaxe into the rock. His arms ached. His back was bent. His skin was covered in scars from 50 years of work. He was 73 years old, and he could not remember what hope felt like. Around him, other humans worked in silence. There were about 400 of them left, survivors from a ship that had been captured during the war. Once, there had been 2,000. The mine had taken the rest. Remembered Earth. He remembered green trees and blue water and cities full of light. He remembered his family, all gone now. He remembered the day the ship had caught their vessel and dragged them here. For 50 years he had believed that humanity was extinct. The guards told them so, laughing. "The galaxy has forgotten you," they said. "You are the last. When you die, there will be nothing left." Had stopped believing in rescue long ago. He worked because working meant living one more day, and living meant something, even if he could not remember what. Above the planet, hidden in the shadow of a moon, the silent thunder waited. Captain studied the colony through his screen. His ship was small, designed for stealth, invisible to sensors. He had been watching for 3 days, learning the guard patterns, counting the weapons, planning the approach. Thermal scans show 412 human life signs, his sensor operator said. They're deep underground in the mining tunnels. Guards, 200 standard equipment, nothing we can't handle. Nodded slowly. This was not just a rescue mission. This was a message. The first contact between humanity and the galaxy in 50 years. It had to be perfect. Sergeant entered the bridge. She wore combat armor, black and silent, designed for close fighting. Behind her stood 12 soldiers the best had. Ground team ready, she said. We go in through the ventilation system, reach the mines and extract the prisoners. 30 minutes in and out. And the broadcast. Smiled, it was not a friendly smile. Already prepared. The moment we secure the prisoners, we send it across every frequency. The whole galaxy will hear. Stood and looked at his crew. They were young, born underground, trained for this moment. None of them had ever fought a real enemy. None of them had ever killed. But they were ready. He could see it in their eyes. 50 years ago, the galaxy watched humanity die, he said. Today, we show them they were wrong. Today, we remind them what we are. Not victims, not ghosts, survivors. And now, we are the ones who will make them afraid. The silent thunder moved toward the planet. In the mines stopped working. Something felt different. The air had changed. The guards seemed nervous, speaking quickly into their communicators. What's happening? Another prisoner whispered. Her name was, and she was younger, only 40, born in the mines. She had never seen Earth. I don't know, said. Then the lights went out. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in red. The guards shouted, raising their weapons, looking for an enemy they could not see. Somewhere above, explosions echoed through the tunnels. Grabbed and pulled her behind a rock pile. His old heart was beating fast. He had given up hope years ago, but something was happening, something impossible. A figure dropped from the ventilation shaft, then another, then more. They moved like shadows, their weapons making soft sounds, and every time they fired, a guard fell. One of the figures approached. Through the dark visor, he could not see a face, but the voice that came through was speaking Korean. Human words, human language. Are you the prisoners from the Earth vessel Sunrise? Could not breathe, could not think. Yes, he managed. The figure removed her helmet. It was a young woman, her face hard but her eyes filled with emotion. I'm Sergeant of the Terran Republic. We've come to take you home. Felt tears on his face. He had not cried in 30 years. Earth is gone, the destroyed it. Smiled. It was a real smile this time, warm and proud. That's what we wanted them to think. Earth is alive. Humanity is alive, and we are taking you back. The rescue moved quickly. The prisoners, weak and confused, were guided through tunnels and up to the surface. Medical teams waited there with food, water, and warm blankets. Ships descended from the sky to carry them away. Looked up at the stars, really looked at them for the first time. Is this real? Held her hand. I think it is. On the silent thunder, activated the communication system. Every channel, every frequency, every station in 100 light years would hear this. He took a deep breath and spoke. This message is for the Galactic Conclave, for the Empire, for every species that watched humanity die and did nothing. He paused. In the distance, reinforcement ships were approaching. They would be too late. 50 years ago, you burned our planet. You killed billions of our people. You declared us extinct and celebrated our death. You were wrong. The prisoners were all aboard now. The last transport lifted off. Fleet, 40 ships that had followed in silence, revealed themselves, forming a protective wall between the transports and the approaching enemy. Humanity is not extinct. We survived, we rebuilt, we grew stronger, and now we are returning. The ships opened fire. The human fleet responded. In seconds, the battle was over. They had expected miners and slaves. They found warriors instead. This is Captain of the Terran Republic vessel Silent Thunder. Remember this day. Remember what you see here, because this is only the beginning. He ended the broadcast. Behind him, his crew cheered. The prisoners wept. The stars waited. In the conclave halls, alarms were sounding. Representatives rushed to their seats, staring at screens showing the human broadcast. The message played over and over. Humanity remembers. Humanity endures. Humanity returns. The commander who had burned Earth watched the recording with wide eyes. His scales had turned pale. His hands trembled. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." But the evidence was undeniable. Human ships, human soldiers, human survivors, alive and fighting. High Arbiter stood at the center of the hall, his crystal body pulsing with troubled light. Just days ago, he had declared humanity extinct. Now their message echoed through the galaxy. "What have we done?" someone asked. Had no answer. On the transport ship heading home, sat by a window watching the stars pass by, sat beside him. "What happens now?" he asked. Looked toward the distant point of light that was the Sol system, Earth, home. "Now," she said, "we show them who we really are." The reckoning. The galaxy had not seen a fleet like this in 1,000 years. 327 human capital ships emerged from the darkness of space, their engines blazing like new stars. Around them flew 10,000 smaller fighters, moving in perfect formation. At the center of the fleet, the flagship Resurrection led the way, its hull black as night, its weapons humming with power. Admiral stood on the bridge, watching the stars ahead. He was 60 years old, born in the bunkers, trained for war since childhood. His father had been a soldier who died defending Earth during the bombing. His mother had carried him underground, keeping him safe so that one day he could finish what his father started. That day had come. "All ships report ready," his communications officer said. "The defensive line is 2 hours ahead." Nodded. They had scrambled their forces after the broadcast from 442B. They had assembled 200 ships near the system, believing it would be enough to stop whatever was coming. They were wrong. "Open a channel to all ships," said. He waited until the light turned green, indicating he was being heard by every captain in the fleet. "This is Admiral. 50 years ago, I was a baby in my mother's arms when she carried me into the darkness. Today, I stand before you as we emerge from that darkness." He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. Young men and women who had never known the sun, who had grown up in tunnels, who had trained their whole lives for this moment. They believe we are ghosts. They believe we are memories. Let us show them that memories can fight. Let us show them that ghosts can kill, for Earth, for our families, for everyone we lost. Today we bring the reckoning. The fleet roared forward. In the conclave station, stood before the assembled representatives. She was 87 years old now, kept alive by medicine developed in the bunkers, her body frail but her voice strong. "You declared humanity extinct," she said, looking at the shocked faces around her. "You watched them burn our world and did nothing. Some of you even celebrated." The section was empty. Their representatives had fled when the fleet appeared. Their empress was calling for reinforcements, but her calls went unanswered. The species she had bullied and conquered for centuries were suddenly finding excuses not to help. "We could have come back as conquerors," continued. "We could have burned your worlds the way you let ours burn. We had 50 years to become monsters." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "But that is not what we chose. We chose to be better than our enemies. We chose justice over revenge. We chose to prove that humanity deserves to exist not because we are powerful, but because we are good." High Arbiter stepped forward. His crystal body was dim, troubled. "What do you want from us?" Looked at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering to feel hatred anymore. "They will answer for their crimes. Those who helped them will be known. Those who could have stopped them but chose not to will face their own consciences. As for the conclave, we want only what we wanted before the war: a seat, a voice, a place among the stars. And if we refuse, Smiled. It was a sad smile, tired and old. You won't refuse because you have seen our fleet. You have seen our technology. And you know that if we wanted to destroy you, we could. But we don't want that. We never wanted that. We just wanted to live. The battle lasted 47 minutes. They fought hard. They were proud warriors with powerful ships and centuries of experience. But they had spent 50 years fighting weak enemies, bullying smaller species, believing themselves invincible. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this exact fight. The first wave of human fighters hit the line like a hammer. Their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen, beams of energy that cut through shields like paper. Ships exploded before they could even fire back. Admiral watched from the resurrection, giving calm orders, adjusting tactics. He felt no joy in the destruction. These were deaths, even if they were enemy deaths. But he felt no guilt either. They had chosen this war. They had started it with fire and genocide. Now they would face the consequences. Admiral, his sensor officer said, voice shaking. The flagship is disabled. They're signaling surrender. Closed his eyes for a moment. This was the choice he had prepared for. The choice that would define humanity's return to the galaxy. Accept the surrender, he said. Cease fire on all ships that lower their weapons. Take prisoners, treat them with dignity. His bridge crew stared at him. After everything they had done, after 50 years of hiding and suffering, mercy seemed impossible. Sir, his first officer asked. Turn to face them. We do not burn worlds, we do not genocide species. We are human, and today we prove what that means. The order went out. Human ships stopped firing on surrendering enemies. Medical ships moved in to help wounded. Prisoners were taken, not killed. The galaxy watched in shock. This was not what they had expected. The Empress watched the battle reports with horror. Her great fleet, the pride of her empire, was being destroyed. But what terrified her more was what came after. The humans were not killing her surrendering soldiers. They were helping them. Why, she whispered, why would they show mercy? Her advisor, an old name, shook his head. Perhaps they are truly what they claim to be, better than us. Slammed her fist on the table. Better. They hid underground like insects. They let us believe they were dead for 50 years. And now they are winning without becoming monsters. Looked at her with something strange in his eyes, something that might have been shame. Perhaps that is the difference between us. We could not imagine mercy, so we assumed they could not either. We were wrong. Across the empire, the species they had conquered for centuries began to rise. They stopped sending tribute. They destroyed their garrison. A dozen other species, seeing the empire weakened, threw off their chains. The empire that had burned Earth was crumbling. Admiral received a message from the conclave. They were ready to negotiate. They were ready to give humanity everything it asked for. He read the message and felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Then he opened a channel to Earth, to Director, waiting in her office beneath the recovering surface. It's done, he said. The fleet is broken. The conclave has agreed to terms. Humanity is returning to the galaxy. Was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. My mother told me about the day the bombs fell. She said she thought it was the end of everything, that humanity would disappear and the stars would forget us. She paused. She was wrong. We didn't disappear. We didn't let them forget. And now we're back. Looked out at the stars, at the debris of the battle, at the human fleet victorious and whole. Yes, he said, we're back, and this time we're staying. 3. New dawn. 5 years had passed since humanity returned to the stars. Earth was healing. The oceans had come back, blue and deep, waves rolling onto beaches that had been ash and dust. Forests covered the continents, new trees growing beside the bones of the old cities. In some places, monuments stood where millions had died. In other places, new cities were rising, glass and steel reaching toward a sky that people could finally see again. President stood at the window of her office in New Seoul, watching the sunrise. She was 52 years old, the first elected leader of the new Terran Republic. Behind her, aides prepared reports and documents, but she took this moment each morning to simply look at the world. It was still hard to believe. After 50 years underground, seeing the sky still felt like a miracle. A knock on her door brought her back to the present. "Madam President, Ambassador is here for the briefing." Smiled, "Send him in." Entered slowly, leaning on a cane. He was 78 now, weakened by his years in the mines but still alive, still fighting. The former slave had become humanity's voice to the galaxy, a symbol of what they had survived and what they had overcome. "Good morning," he said, sitting down carefully. "Good morning, old friend." She poured him tea, a habit from the bunkers that she had never lost. "How was the conclave session?" Chuckled, the representative cried. "Again. She keeps apologizing for her species not doing more during the war. And their new government sent another message of regret. They're still dealing with the war crimes tribunals. It will take years to finish." Nodded. After the empire fell, the people had overthrown Empress. She was now in a prison cell, awaiting trial for genocide. Her commanders, including, had faced justice first. The galaxy had watched as the species that once burned worlds was made to answer for its crimes. But humanity had not demanded blood. They had demanded truth. They had demanded acknowledgement. They had demanded that the galaxy remember what had happened, so it could never happen again. "The Monument of Silence opens today," said quietly. Looked back at the window. "I know, are you ready?" "No, but I will be there anyway." The Monument of Silence stood where Seoul had once been before the bombs. It was a vast structure, built from the recovered stone of the old city. 50 pillars, one for each year of hiding. Each pillar contained the names of those who died in the bombing and those who died underground, waiting for the return that some never saw. At the center of the monument, a flame burned that would never go out. The eternal fire, lit from the first torch brought to the surface when the bunkers opened. Thousands of people gathered for the opening ceremony. Humans who had lived underground. Humans who had been rescued from slave colonies. Children born after the return who knew the sun and the rain as natural things. And aliens too. Representatives from 100 species who had come to witness, to mourn, to understand. Director stood at the podium. She was 65 now, gray-haired and tired, but she would not let anyone else give this speech. 55 years ago, fire fell from the sky, she began. They believed they were ending our story, but stories are not so easily ended. They continue in the hearts of those who survive. They echo in the memories of those who remain. They grow in the dreams of those yet to be born. She looked at the crowd, at the faces watching her. "We did not survive because we were strong. We survived because we refused to give up. We survived because we held onto each other in the darkness. We survived because we believed that someday, somehow, we would see the sun again." Tears rolled down many faces. Old wounds opened and honored. Today, we remember those who did not survive, those who died in the fire, those who died underground never knowing if their sacrifice would matter, those who died in the slave mines believing they were the last humans in existence. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "They are not forgotten. They will never be forgotten." She stepped back, and President took her place. "The galaxy once declared us extinct," said. "They were wrong, but more importantly, they misunderstood what extinction means. You cannot kill a species that refuses to die. You cannot end a story that people keep telling. You cannot destroy a hope that lives in every human heart." She gestured to the monument, to the flame, to the sky above. "This monument is not just for the dead. It is for the living. It is a promise that we will never forget where we came from, and it is a warning to anyone who would try to destroy us again. We survived fire. We survived darkness. We survived 50 years of silence, and we emerged stronger than before. Young stood at the edge of the crowd, watching with wide eyes. He was 16 years old, born 3 years after the return. He had never known the bunkers. He had never known the fear of hiding. For him, Earth was a world of sunshine and growing things, of open skies and endless possibilities. But he had listened to the stories. His grandmother had told him about the darkness, about the waiting, about the day the doors finally opened and she saw the sky for the first time. "What do we do now?" he had asked her once. "We remember," she had said. "We learn, we grow, and we reach for the stars." Now, standing before the monument, understood what she meant. After the ceremony, Ambassador met with representatives from the freed species. Though a dozen others who had been slaves of the Empire and were now finding their own paths. "You showed us that survival is possible," the representative said. "When they conquered our world, we thought it was over, but then we heard about Earth, about the bunkers, about your return. If you could survive that, we could survive anything." Held her small hands in his old fingers. "We did not survive alone, and neither will you. That is what the galaxy should be, not empires and conquests, but hands reaching out in the darkness, helping each other toward the light." That night walked through the streets of New Seoul with his grandmother. She was very old now, walking slowly, but she insisted on seeing the new city. The lights reflected in her eyes, mixing with tears she did not try to hide. "I never thought I would see this," she said. "When I was young, I believed I would die underground. I believed my children would die underground. I believed there would be nothing left of us but bones and silence." Held her arm, helping her walk. "But we're here." "Yes," she smiled up at the sky, at the stars appearing one by one as the sun set. "We're here, and we will stay here. And someday, you and your children will walk on other worlds, worlds we can't even imagine yet." "Are you scared?" asked, "of the future?" Laughed softly. "No, I was scared in the bunkers. I was scared when we came outside. I was scared during the war, but now I am only grateful and hopeful." She stopped walking and turned to face her grandson. "The galaxy tried to end us. They failed. And now we have a second chance. A chance to be better than we were before. A chance to build something lasting and good. That is not something to fear. That is something to embrace." Looked at the stars, at the infinite possibilities waiting above. "Then let's embrace it," he said. And somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships continued their journey outward. Explorers and scientists, traders and diplomats, carrying humanity's hope to every corner of the galaxy. They would meet new species. They would discover new worlds. They would face new challenges. But they would never forget where they came from. They would never forget the fire and the darkness, and they would never stop reaching for the light. The declaration of extinction had been wrong. Humanity was very much alive. And their story was only beginning.